Am I the a-hole for leaving my dad's birthday dinner early after overhearing my sister talking about me? A few months ago, my sister Eva, 33F, and I, 28F, found out we were both pregnant. Eva has struggled with infertility for years, so the entire family was overjoyed for her. I already have a son, 2M, with my husband, 32M, and while we were thrilled about adding a new member to our family, I was especially happy for Eva. This was a dream come true for her, and I wanted to celebrate that. Unfortunately, a few weeks ago, I lost my baby. It was devastating, and when we told my family, they were supportive and kind. However, I ended up pulling away from them for a bit. My family is incredibly close, we see each other multiple times a week and frequently drop by each other's houses. This kind of absence from me was out of character, but I just couldn't handle it. I knew they'd try to avoid mentioning Eva's pregnancy around me, but I didn't want to overshadow her happiness. I also couldn't handle being reminded of my loss every time I saw her. So, I stopped going to Sunday dinners at my parents' house and avoided spending time with Eva, even though we'd been hanging out a lot before. My responses to their messages were vague. I'd say things like I'm not feeling up to it and leave it at that. I admit that my communication wasn't great, but I was struggling to process everything. Yesterday, my parents were hosting a family dinner for my dad's birthday. I'd been thinking about going, especially since I missed my family. While the pain of losing my baby is still there, I felt like I could at least put it aside enough to celebrate my dad and show support for Eva and her new baby when she arrives. I told my family we'd be coming. The day of the dinner was hectic. We had to stop and pick up a gift for my dad, and my son had a full-on tantrum before we left. By the time we finally made it to my parents' house, we were an hour late. My family is usually pretty relaxed about timing, so I didn't think much of it. We also didn't text anyone to let them know we'd be late, which in hindsight might have been a mistake. We're typically the ones who arrive early, so I can see how they might have thought we weren't coming. When we arrived, I wished my dad a happy birthday and then headed to the kitchen, where my mom, Eva, and my sisters-in-law were chatting. Just before entering, I overheard my mom say something like, "Well, I guess, Op, isn't coming." Eva responded, "What did you expect? She probably changed her mind and is just staying home again." Honestly, I'm sorry for her, but you'd think she was the first woman to ever lose a kid. And it's not even her first kid. Hearing that crushed me. I know I've been distant, but to hear my sister dismiss my grief like that, especially when I've been trying to give her space to enjoy her pregnancy, hurt more than I can put into words. They moved on to other topics, but I couldn't shake what I'd heard. I didn't feel like I could face them, so I went to the living room to find my husband. I told him we needed to leave. He could see how upset I was and didn't push back. We quickly apologized to my dad and said we had to go. My dad and some of my brothers protested, but I just couldn't stay. My husband and I got our son and left. When we got home, I broke down crying. My husband asked me what happened, and I told him what I'd overheard. He was furious at Eva's comment but thought we might have made a mistake by leaving so abruptly. He pointed out that my dad had been looking forward to seeing us, and our son had missed out on time with his cousins. Later that night, my brother texted me. He said my dad had been really upset about us leaving and brought it up at dinner. Apparently, this led to a huge argument. My dad was angry with my mom and Eva once he realized I must have overheard them talking. One of my sisters-in-law confirmed what they'd said, which made things worse. My dad and one of my brothers yelled at my mom and Eva, while they tried to defend themselves by saying they didn't mean for me to hear. My brother, the one who texted me, said the fight was bad and that he wished I'd just stayed so none of it would have happened. He also told me that Eva and my mom had likely been venting out of frustration. My absence from family events over the past few weeks had been unusual, and they were probably hurt and upset about it. He said they didn't mean to be cruel but were expressing their feelings in a private moment that I wasn't supposed to hear. Now I feel horrible. I didn't mean to ruin my dad's birthday dinner or cause a family fight. I can't stop thinking about what Eva said, though. It was so dismissive of my grief, and it made me feel like I was wrong for mourning my baby. At the same time, I can see how my behavior might have led to her feeling hurt or angry. Maybe I should have stayed and talked to her later instead of leaving and unintentionally creating drama. I've been looking into grief counseling because I know I need help processing everything. Eva has never experienced a miscarriage, as far as I know, but she struggled for years to conceive, so I understand that she might see things differently. Still, her words really hurt. So, AITA for leaving the dinner after overhearing my sister's comments? Should I have stayed and tried to keep the peace? Part 2. The fallout from the family dinner. After we left my dad's birthday dinner early, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, guilt, and confusion. Overhearing my sister's comment was like pouring salt on a wound I was already struggling to heal. But as much as I wanted to stay angry at Eva, I couldn't stop thinking about how my actions might have contributed to the situation. My family had always been so close, and my sudden withdrawal had likely created a gap none of us knew how to navigate. The day after the dinner, I stayed home, trying to process everything. My husband suggested we talk about it, but I needed space to sort through my feelings. I replayed Eva's words in my mind over and over: "You'd think she was the first woman to ever lose a kid. And it's not even her first kid." It wasn't just hurtful, it was dismissive of my grief, as if losing my baby didn't matter because I already had a child. But I also couldn't ignore the other side of it. Eva had struggled for years to conceive, enduring rounds of fertility treatments and heartbreaks along the way. Now that she was finally pregnant, I could understand how my withdrawal might have felt like a rejection of her joy. I started to wonder if she thought I was punishing her for having what I lost. A few days later, my dad called me. He didn't mention the fight at dinner but said he missed me and hoped I'd come by soon. Hearing his voice reminded me how much I'd pulled away from everyone, and guilt settled in my chest. My dad has always been my rock, and I felt terrible for how my abrupt departure might have hurt him. I promised to visit soon, but I knew I had to handle things with Eva and my mom first. I decided to reach out to my brother, the one who had texted me about the argument after we left. He's always been the mediator in our family, and I trusted him to give me an honest perspective. When I asked him what happened after we left, he didn't sugarcoat it. Apparently, when my dad realized we'd left because I overheard something, he confronted my mom and Eva in front of everyone. One of my sisters-in-law confirmed what they'd said, and it turned into a shouting match. My dad was furious, saying that Eva and my mom had no right to talk about me like that, especially given what I'd been through. Eva tried to defend herself, saying, "It's not like I don't feel bad for her, but I can't keep walking on eggshells. She's acting like I did something wrong by getting pregnant." Hearing that made my heart ache. I never wanted Eva to feel like I resented her, but I could see how my distance might have made it seem that way. My brother also told me my mom had chimed in, saying I should have at least communicated better instead of disappearing and expecting everyone to read my mind. Their words stung, but they also gave me clarity. I realized that while their comments were hurtful, they likely came from a place of frustration and misunderstanding rather than malice. I decided to take the first step toward mending things. I started by reaching out to Eva, texting her to ask if we could meet up and talk. She agreed, and we met at a small cafe a few days later. When we sat down, the tension between us was palpable. I started by telling her what I'd overheard and how much it had hurt me. I didn't accuse her or raise my voice, I just told her how her words had made me feel. I explained that losing my baby was one of the hardest things I'd ever gone through and that I'd pulled away from everyone because I didn't want to overshadow her happiness or be a constant reminder of my loss. Eva listened quietly, and when I finished, she sighed. "I'm sorry, I really am," she said. "I didn't mean for you to hear that, and I shouldn't have said it at all. But I've been feeling, I don't know, hurt, I guess. I thought you were avoiding me because you were mad at me or blaming me for being pregnant." Her words confirmed what I'd been afraid of. I told her I never blamed her and that my distance wasn't about her, it was about me trying to cope with my grief. "I thought I was doing the right thing by giving you space," I said, "but I can see now that it probably felt like I was shutting you out." By the end of our conversation, we both apologized. Eva promised to be more mindful of how her words might affect me, and I promised to communicate better and not shut her out again. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary, and I left feeling like we'd taken a step toward healing. Next, I called my mom. That conversation was harder. She brushed off her comments at first, saying they were just venting and that I wasn't supposed to hear them. But when I told her how much it hurt to feel dismissed by my own mother, she softened. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she said. "I didn't mean to make you feel like your pain didn't matter. I was just frustrated. We've all missed you so much." I apologized for my lack of communication and told her I was working on it. She hugged me when I visited her later that week, and while things weren't completely back to normal, they felt a little easier. My dad, as always, was the most understanding. When I visited him, he hugged me tightly and told me he loved me. "You've been through a lot," he said. "But don't forget, you've got a family that wants to be there for you. Don't shut us out, okay? Since then, I've been making an effort to reconnect with my family. I've started going to Sunday dinners again, and while it's still bittersweet to see Eva's growing belly, I'm genuinely happy for her. I've also continued grief counseling, which has been a lifesaver in helping me process my emotions. This experience taught me that grief is complicated, and it can create misunderstandings even among the people who love us most. But it also showed me the importance of communication and forgiveness. While I wish things hadn't unfolded the way they did, I'm grateful for the chance to heal and move forward with my family. Thank you so much for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. What would you do in a situation like this? Do you think I was right to leave, or should I have stayed and addressed the issue later? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.